Have you ever noticed that the more you think, the further you drift from what they call normal? It's not that you think you're better than others, but as your mind deepens, others start to become more distant. It's as if with every reflection, you slowly pull away from the world around you, as if reality itself doesn't quite make sense to you anymore. With every question that arises, you feel the weight of not having easy answers. And maybe you wonder, is the problem me? Or is the world just not ready for someone like me? Sometimes you try to fit in. You smile when you're supposed to smile. You say the right things in conversations. But with each attempt, you feel more and more detached, as if the reality around you is something you can't quite understand. Empty conversations, superficial interests, meaningless jokes. It's like you're trapped inside a glass, separated from others. What matters to you is different. You question things that others don't even notice, and that slowly makes you a stranger in your own world. And then the question arises, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? But what if I told you that the problem isn't you? What if the world simply isn't ready for someone like you? Because this is what happens when you start to see things differently. You become an observer, not a participant. Not that you chose this. It's not a choice to become distant, but rather a consequence of a mind that sees beyond the surface, that feels more than others do. It's at this point that many start to ask themselves, why can't I connect with others? Why do I feel isolated even when I'm surrounded by so many? The problem is that you see what others choose to ignore. You think in a way that others can't understand. And this, instead of being celebrated, is rejected. The truth you carry, the truth you see and feel so intensely, creates discomfort in others. And when your vision starts to challenge the world around you, it's easier for people to step away than to accept what you have to say. The loneliness you feel doesn't come from a lack of company, but from a lack of real connection. Because deep down, you know you're not broken. You just see more than others, you feel more deeply. And this, as lonely as it may seem, is a sign of a rare mind, a mind that doesn't conform, that doesn't accept things at face value. If this resonates with you so far, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss out on exploring what it truly means to live authentically in a world that doesn't understand the depth of your thoughts. Let's continue this journey together. Intelligence, in some ways, sets us apart from the average. Those who question too much, those who see the inconsistencies in the world and dare to look deeper, end up becoming different. At first, it's almost imperceptible. You still manage to fit in some conversations, still participate in some jokes, and engage in a few social interactions. But over time, you start to notice that these conversations no longer hold the same value, that the topics you once found interesting now seem trivial. This disconnect isn't immediate, but it's inevitable. As your mind expands, you pull away from what's superficial. Society, despite claiming to value intelligence, would often prefer everyone just conform to what's known, to what's already established. Those who challenge the status quo with their questions and doubts aren't always welcomed. They're seen as too complex, as obstacles to the peace and order of what is acceptable. You start to notice that shallow conversations, that small talk, feel like they require something from you that you can no longer give. No matter how hard you try, you can't avoid the discomfort that arises when talking about things that don't matter. You begin to notice the contradictions in everything, in people's words, in actions, in behaviors. The things everyone else does, the things everyone else thinks are normal, start to feel distant, as though you have access to a layer of reality others can't see. A person who is gifted with a high degree of intelligence must expect to find many occasions when they must be alone. Arthur Schopenhauer. And that's when the dilemma begins. Intelligence isn't something you can simply turn off. Once you begin to see the world more critically, once you start to question everything, your mind can no longer settle for simple answers or easy conclusions. No matter how hard you try to fit in, the very act of questioning will make you feel isolated. When you think deeply, you don't just see more than others, you start to notice the lies that society accepts as unquestionable truths, the conventions that everyone follows without truly thinking about them. What's hardest is that others don't want to see it. They don't want you to show them the truth. They don't want you to challenge what's already in place. And this is the reality for many of us. The more we ask, the more we see, the further we feel from others. Because at the end of the day, people don't want to be confronted with the truth. They want comfort. They want certainty. They want quick answers and simple solutions. And the truth, while liberating, is also uncomfortable. It breaks the surface piece and shakes up the structures of what many prefer to believe. The feeling of always being apart, of seeing the truth and still not being able to share it without causing discomfort is painful. Small talk about the weather, about trivial matters, about who did what, becomes almost unbearable. You try to fit in, but you just can't. Something inside of you is already beyond that. You feel like you have something more to offer, something deeper, but the world around you isn't ready for it. The more you try to fit in, the more you realize that you can't. You begin to mask yourself, to wear a facade, to pretend. You laugh at the right moments. You nod along in conversations. You agree with opinions that don't sit right with you, just to make things easier. It's a tiring game, isn't it? To constantly pretend to be something you're not, to suppress your true self just to blend in. And yet, deep down, you feel more alone than ever. It's not that you don't want connection, you crave it. But the connection you seek isn't the superficial type that most people are content with. You want something deeper. You want to talk about ideas, about the meaning of life, about why things are the way they are. You want to dive into discussions that make you question the world, that force you to reflect, to grow. But instead, you're stuck talking about things that don't matter with people who don't understand you. The frustration builds. You try to engage, but it's always the same. Shallow topics, meaningless chatter. You start to feel like you're drowning in a sea of triviality, while your mind is racing with ideas and questions that you can't share. You feel like you're living in two worlds at once. The world of the surface level, where everyone is fine with small talk and easy answers, and the world of depth, where your mind is constantly searching for truth and meaning. It's exhausting, pretending, hiding parts of yourself that you know are valuable but are too complex for the average person to appreciate. And over time, it starts to take its toll. You wonder if you'll ever find someone who truly gets you, someone who can understand the way you think, who can engage with your mind on the same level. But as much as you long for connection, you also begin to realize something important. The struggle to fit in isn't just about finding the right people. It's about accepting that you are different and learning to embrace it. It's about finding peace in your own uniqueness and understanding that not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. Because, in the end, the people who truly matter are the ones who appreciate you for who you are, not for who you pretend to be. Have you ever found yourself sitting in a room full of people, surrounded by conversations, yet feeling completely disconnected? The sound of chatter fills the air, but it feels hollow to you. It's like everyone else is speaking a different language, one that you don't understand, one that you can't engage with. Small talk becomes noise. Words are thrown around without much meaning, and you can't help but feel like you're missing the point. Why do people engage in these interactions? Why do they waste their time talking about things that seem insignificant? And more importantly, why do they avoid the deeper conversations? It's almost as if there's an unspoken rule. Don't think too much. Don't question too deeply. Just go along with the flow. But you can't. Your mind doesn't work that way. You're constantly questioning, analyzing, seeking meaning in everything. And it's not just about the big questions. Why do we exist? What's the meaning of life? It's also about the little things. Why do people say things they don't mean? Why does it feel like everyone is just going through the motions, stuck in a routine, living in a world of pre-packaged ideas? You start to feel like an outsider, like you're on the outside looking in. You see the way people interact, the way they follow trends and ideas without truly understanding them. They accept what they're told, follow the crowd, and never stop to think if it's right. But for you, it's different. You can't simply accept things at face value. You want to understand the why, the how, the deeper truth behind everything. The wise man is he who knows how to separate himself from the herd, to question what others follow without thought. Arthur Schopenhauer. And it's frustrating, isn't it? To constantly be surrounded by people who seem content with surface-level interactions, while you're over here struggling to find someone who can understand the depth of your thoughts. You want to connect on a deeper level, but the opportunity never comes. And that leaves you with a sense of isolation, a feeling that no matter how many people are around you, you're still alone. So, what do you do with this? Do you continue to pretend, to mask your true thoughts and feelings just to fit in? Or do you accept the loneliness that comes with being different? The choice is yours, but one thing is clear. The more you question, the more you reflect, the further you will stray from the crowd. It's not easy, and it's not always comfortable. But the truth is, you're not broken. You're just awake in a world that prefers to stay asleep. Thinking deeply isn't something that can be turned off. Once you begin to question the world around you, to look beyond the surface, it's impossible to go back to the way things were. You can no longer ignore the contradictions, the hypocrisies, the truths that everyone else tries to avoid. And while that may sound liberating, it comes with a cost. The more you think, the more you see the world for what it really is. You begin to understand that most people are content living in a state of ignorance, blissfully unaware of the deeper realities of life. They go about their days accepting things as they are, never questioning the system, the status quo, or their place in it. But for you, that's not enough. You can't simply accept things at face value. You need to understand why things are the way they are. You need to see the world with clarity, even if that means facing uncomfortable truths. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. Arthur Schopenhauer. And that's where the consequences start to show. The more you think, the more you analyze, the more you pull away from the world around you. You see the cracks in the facade, the things that others overlook. And while that might give you a sense of clarity, it also leaves you feeling isolated. You begin to realize that the deeper you go, the fewer people you can connect with. The conversations you once had with friends, family, or colleagues now seem shallow. The things that used to excite you no longer hold the same appeal. You feel as though you're living in a different world, a world that no one else seems to understand. But here's the thing. This is not a flaw. This is the price of intelligence. The more deeply you think, the more you detach from the superficial. And that's okay. It's part of the process. As you continue to seek truth and clarity, you will find that the connections you crave will become rarer and rarer. But the ones you do find will be deeper, more meaningful, and more genuine. The paradox of intelligence is one that many who possess it struggle to understand. On one hand, intelligence is celebrated. People admire those who can solve problems, those who can think critically, those who can process complex ideas. But on the other hand, true intelligence often isolates. The more you think, the more you analyze, the more you question, the further you pull away from the very people who once seemed like your peers. You become too complex for simple conversations, too deep for shallow interactions. And that's when the loneliness begins to set in. What makes intelligence so isolating is that it doesn't just solve problems, it challenges the very norms and structures of the world around you. It exposes flaws, inconsistencies, and contradictions that most people are either unaware of or prefer to ignore. And while many are content with things as they are, people who think deeply are constantly trying to make sense of the world, searching for deeper meaning, seeking answers that don't come easily. But this constant search for truth can be exhausting. When you start to see the world in a more complex way, when you realize that the answers are rarely simple, you begin to feel the weight of that knowledge. It's not that you want to be different or separate from others, but the deeper you go, the harder it becomes to connect with people who aren't on the same wavelength. You start to see the world through a different lens, and that lens doesn't always align with the perspectives of those around you. And yet, the more you try to explain yourself, the more you realize that others don't understand. You try to share your thoughts, your questions, your insights, but they fall on deaf ears. People look at you like you're strange or different, as if your thoughts are too complex, too uncomfortable for them to process. You become the outsider, the one who doesn't quite fit in, the one who sees the world in a way that others can't. This is the paradox. Intelligence, which should be a gift, often feels like a curse. It opens your mind to the complexities of life, but it also isolates you from others. It makes you aware of the world's flaws, but it also leaves you feeling alienated from the very people you want to connect with. The more you think, the more you pull away, and the harder it becomes to find others who truly understand you. But this isolation isn't a reflection of your worth. It's simply the price of being someone who sees more, someone who thinks more, someone who feels more. And as difficult as that may be, it's important to understand that this isolation is not a failure. It's the result of being different in a world that values comfort over truth. As we continue to grow, the desire for connection becomes stronger. But it's not just any connection. You're not looking for superficial interactions or casual friendships. What you long for is something real. You want to find someone who truly understands you, someone who doesn't just hear your words, but gets the depth of your thoughts, the weight of your feelings. Someone who can engage with you on a level that goes beyond the surface. The problem, however, is that authentic connection is becoming rarer. It's hard to find people who are willing to look past the small talk, past the facades, and dive into something meaningful. Most people are content with shallow relationships that don't require much effort or introspection. They talk about the things that don't matter, avoiding the uncomfortable topics that might force them to question their own beliefs, their own lives. And this is where the frustration sets in. You want to talk about ideas, about the things that matter, but the people around you just aren't interested. They want to gossip, to follow trends, to engage in the kind of conversations that don't require them to think too hard. You can't help but feel like an outsider in these situations, like you're trying to communicate in a language that no one else understands. But the deeper issue is that you begin to feel like you're the only one who sees the world in this way. You long for that person who gets it, who doesn't need to ask for explanations or justifications. Someone who is willing to explore the depths with you, who isn't afraid of the complexity of your thoughts. Yet, that person is nowhere to be found. You start to wonder, if no one around you seems to understand, what does that mean for your journey? Are you simply too different, too complex for the world you live in? The answer, in part, is yes. The people who truly get you, who can understand your depth, may be few and far in between, but they exist, and finding them is part of the journey. Compassion is the basis of morality. The way we understand others and form connections comes from the recognition that we are all part of the same human experience. Arthur Schopenhauer. What you must remember is that your desire for authentic connection comes from your ability to understand others on a deeper level. That understanding, that compassion, is what will eventually lead you to the people who truly resonate with your way of thinking. It's a long road, but the deeper connections you seek will be worth the effort. You're not looking for everyone's approval, just for those who can appreciate your complexity. In the meantime, you must learn to embrace the solitude. Understand that this loneliness isn't a flaw. It's a sign of your individuality, your ability to see beyond the ordinary, beyond the surface. It's a rare gift, even if it feels heavy at times. And as you continue your journey, you'll find that the connections you seek will become more meaningful, and those who truly understand you will be worth the wait. When you find yourself grappling with the loneliness and isolation that come from deep thinking, it can sometimes feel like you're the only one experiencing it. But the truth is, you're not alone. The great German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer understood this struggle centuries ago. Schopenhauer's philosophy is often considered pessimistic, but it's also deeply honest about the human experience. He understood that for those who think deeply, the world can feel isolating and alienating, and that is a natural consequence of intelligence. Schopenhauer believed that intelligence, especially in its purest form, isolates. He argued that the more deeply a person thinks, the more disconnected they become from the world around them. The majority of people, he said, live on the surface, content with the simple and the comfortable. But the truly intelligent are constantly questioning, constantly seeing through the illusions that others are content to believe. A solidão é a sorte de todos os espíritus excepcionais. A solidão é a medida do valor de homem. Arthur Schopenhauer. One of Schopenhauer's central ideas was that life itself is driven by an irrational force, the will. This will is a blind, unstoppable drive for pleasure, power, and validation, and it shapes the way most people live their lives. For the majority, life is about fulfilling desires and avoiding discomfort. But the truly intelligent see beyond this. They understand that the will is ultimately endless and unsatisfying, and they recognize the futility of constantly chasing after external validation. This awareness sets them apart, making them feel like outsiders in a world that's governed by shallow desires and superficial goals. Schopenhauer also spoke about the value of solitude. To him, solitude was not a punishment, but a form of liberation. He believed that only in solitude could a person truly confront the reality of their own thoughts, their own existence, without the distractions of the world. Solitude, in Schopenhauer's view, was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It was a space where clarity could emerge, where the mind could truly explore and understand the deeper truths of life. For those who think deeply, Schopenhauer's words are both a comfort and a challenge. They remind us that our loneliness, our isolation, is not a personal failure. It is simply the price we pay for the ability to see the world more clearly than most. And while this may feel lonely at times, it also gives us a deeper connection to the truth. Schopenhauer's philosophy suggests that we shouldn't strive to fit in or to conform to the expectations of others. Instead, we should embrace our unique way of seeing the world, even if it means walking a lonely path. As you reflect on your own experience, you may find that Schopenhauer's ideas resonate with you in a way that brings some relief. His understanding of the isolation that comes with intelligence offers an explanation, a framework for understanding why you feel the way you do. And while it may not solve the pain of loneliness, it provides a philosophical grounding for why that loneliness exists, and why it can ultimately be a source of strength. Solitude is often seen as a weakness in a world that celebrates constant connectivity and social interaction. The idea that we are only as good as our ability to network, to fit in, to belong, is ingrained in our culture. But for those of us who think deeply, solitude is not a punishment, it's a sanctuary. It is in solitude that we find the freedom to explore our own thoughts, to understand our place in the world, and to reconnect with what truly matters to us. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it's easy to lose sight of who we really are. We become distracted by the noise of other people's opinions, by the pressures to conform, to meet expectations. But when we're alone, we are free to listen to our own voice, to hear the whispers of our inner thoughts, and to confront the truths we may be too afraid to acknowledge in the presence of others. Solitude gives us the space to reflect, to grow, and to find clarity. It's a space where we can strip away the distractions and focus on what's essential. It allows us to reconnect with ourselves, to see the world through our own lens without the influence of others. And in that clarity, we often find the answers to the questions we've been asking for so long. However, embracing solitude is not always easy. It requires us to face the discomfort of being alone, the silence that often feels deafening. It can be a challenge, especially when society places so much value on social interactions and outward success. But the truth is, solitude can be incredibly powerful. It is in those quiet moments alone that we often have our most profound realizations, that we make the discoveries that lead to true personal growth. For those who think deeply, the external noise can often feel overwhelming. It's difficult to find a space that is truly your own, a place where you can be yourself without the pressure to conform or perform. Solitude, in this sense, becomes a form of self-preservation. It is a way of protecting our mental and emotional well-being, a way of giving ourselves the space to think, to feel, and to be. And while it may seem lonely at times, it's important to recognize that solitude is not an absence. It is a presence. It is the presence of your own mind, your own thoughts, your own truth. And in this presence, you become whole. You no longer need to rely on others for validation or approval. You learn to embrace your own voice, to trust your own thoughts, and to find peace in your own company. Embracing solitude isn't about rejecting the world or isolating yourself from others. It's about recognizing the value of being alone with your thoughts, understanding that in those moments you are not incomplete. You are simply giving yourself the freedom to be. As you look back on everything you've learned, everything you've experienced, one truth becomes clear. You are different. The path you've walked, the questions you've asked, the answers you've sought, they have all led you to this moment. And though the journey has been lonely at times, it has also been deeply meaningful. You are not broken, not flawed. You simply see the world in a way that few others do. The loneliness, the isolation, it's not a sign of your failure, but a testament to your depth. The more you think, the more you feel, the more you question, the further you move away from the crowd, and that's okay. The world doesn't need more people who follow the herd. What it needs are people who question, who challenge, who offer new perspectives. This is the price of true intelligence. It's not about knowing all the answers or fitting in with everyone else. It's about seeking the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. It's about accepting that you won't always be understood, that you won't always be appreciated, and that's perfectly fine. Because in the end, the only approval you need is your own. The people who truly matter, the ones who will understand you, may not be many, but they will be worth the wait. And while the world may seem like a place of shallow connections and empty conversations, you know that your path is different. You know that you are capable of something greater, something more profound. In embracing your unique way of thinking, your deep sense of self, you find peace. You stop trying to fit in. Stop shrinking yourself to meet the expectations of others. You start becoming who you truly are, and that is the ultimate form of freedom. You may feel like you're alone, but in reality, you are ahead of your time. You see what others can't, and that makes you stronger, more aware, more in tune with the truths of life. You are not lost. You are simply ahead of the curve, and in time, others may catch up, or they may not, but it won't matter, because you will already be free. So, if you've made it this far, know this: you are not broken. You are simply awake, and that awakening is your greatest strength. Embrace it. Let it guide you, let it shape you, and let it lead you to the peace and understanding you seek. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've resonated with anything shared here, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who might benefit. Let's continue building a community of minds who don't fit in, because, as we've learned today, we were never meant to.